Hello and welcome to Ravenwoods. Today's video is about Ted Owens and his belief in aliens and psychokinetic powers. Ted Owens was born in 1920, and he was an American who won notoriety by claiming macro psychokinetic powers, an ability to control the weather on a large scale, directing lightning strikes, and cause or predict accidents. He claimed he was an agent of alien space intelligences acting through him. He believed that aliens had performed psychic surgery on his brain so that they could act through him. Certain observers were impressed by the frequency in which his predictions of future events matched reality. Owens was born in Bedford, Indiana on the 10th of February 1920. His father was a gambling addict. He was raised by his grandparents who, he said, both had psychic gifts. His grandmother's mother reportedly had been known for her ability to find lost objects and predict deaths, and his grandfather was a dowser. And a dowser is a person that can find water with the divining rods. Owens claimed his first psychic experience was spontaneous levitation at age 4, followed by another at age 13. He said that he had an imaginary friend who taught him to read precociously, and then he learned hypnosis by reading about it, going on to perform demonstrations at parties as a teen. By his own account, he graduated from high school by blackmailing a teacher with a photograph of an embarrassing moment. From 1941 to 1945, Owens served in the U.S. Navy, first assigned to learn electronics at Purdue University, then deployed to the South Pacific in 1943. During this time, he felt he had gained mind-reading ability and contacted parapsychologist J.B. Rhine at Duke University, who gave him a job as a typist. Rhine never considered Owens one of his star subjects, and he is not mentioned in any of Rhine's books. Owens claimed to have psychokinetic powers at this time. Mishlove asked other people who'd been with Owens at Duke, and none were able to recall specific instances of him performing psychokinesis, although they said that odd things happened around Owens without elaborating. Owens studied at Duke till 1947, after which he started a construction job in Houston. Here he claimed to have acquired the ability to control lightning by invoking a female spirit named Big Lorney. In 1963, he claimed he and his second wife were suffering from blistering heat on a summer day when he decided to invoke rain, pointed his finger at the sky, and projected the words rain, storm, lightning into the air. A storm followed in a short time, and to ensure it wasn't a coincidence, Owens repeated the feat numerous times in the next 2 weeks, according to his claim. By 1965, Owens had concluded that his psychokinetic powers came from space intelligences who had been trying to contact him from childhood, and who had been the cause of his sighting of a cigar-shaped UFO while driving in Texas in 1955. The space intelligences telepathically explained to him why they'd chosen him to be their prophet. And he states, "I'm an experiment with them to find out just how much psychokinetic power a human being can absorb and stand. It took them literally ages to find a human being like myself to whom they could communicate with back and forth." Later, he would compare himself with the biblical figure Moses, and Mishlove notes that this comparison engendered a belief that Owens that whatever harmful consequences resulted from his demonstrations, they served a higher purpose. Henceforth, Owens felt he need not answer to the earthly authorities, but only the space intelligences. From 1965 to 1969, Owens repeatedly attempted to control storms or produce Atlantic hurricanes and began repeating, informing U.S. government agencies about his claimed abilities, to no avail. By 1969, when Owens published the book, How to Contact Space People, he had begun trying to document his actions by announcing them in writing to other people beforehand and having witnesses write out and sign affidavits. It is only through seeing this documentation, Mishlove writes, that he was able to put any credence in Owens' claims. In 1969, Owens gave up regular work altogether to concentrate on paranormal efforts. For the rest of his life, he did so, moving in with his children from place to another in the continental U.S. In 1987, he called a sympathetic tabloid journalist, Wayne Grover, to say that he had moved his family to New York State to be picked up by UFOs. He sent drawings of the UFOs by his son and an affidavit from a neighbor affirming the local UFO sightings. This was following a flurry of phone calls whose contents Grover did not disclose, saying only that the predictions made at this time changed his life. On 28 December 1987, Owens died of cirrhosis of the liver. Now we're going to move on to the claims and predictions that Owens made. Mishlove identifies 4 researchers who were open to receiving correspondence from Owens to document the claim of psychokinetic action starting in 1968. Clinical psychologist Leo Sprinkle, astronomer J. Allen Hynek, psychiatrist and parapsychologist Berthold Schwartz, and popular UFO author Otto Binder. They kept files up into the early 70s. From these files by other scientists, and from his own correspondence from Owens, Mishlove compiled the phenomena he considered the most impressive. Lightning strikes. According to a Philadelphia lawyer, Sidney Margell, he and Owens were watching a rainstorm in the city by night on 8th of May 1967, when Owens offered to make lightning strike at any place Margell chose, and apparently succeeded, producing the only bolt of lightning in the rainstorm. Later, Kenneth Bach and Charles J., both of Merton, Pennsylvania, wrote an affidavit that they had witnessed 3 lightning strikes directed near the town's city hall after requesting that Owens produce them there, and another in a different area of the sky when they asked him to produce one there. Nixon's resignation. Owens' prediction that U.S. President Richard Nixon would resign or be forced out of office was published by Warren Smith in What the Seers Predict for 1971 and in Saga magazine the same year, before the Watergate scandal became public. Mishlove notes that no other American president has resigned or been forced out of office before. Revenge on Cleveland. In May 1972, after a disappointing reception to his claims in the American city of Cleveland, Illinois, Owens wrote that several contacts saying that he would wreak destruction on the city in the form of heat, drought, and people acting strangely. He told another friend that there would be electrical disturbances, lightning storms, plane crashes, and shipping accidents. He later also predicted odd animal behavior, high winds, and blackouts. That summer, lightning caused 3 fatalities and an unusual amount of damage, including a blackout, a week-long heat wave that was blamed for an unusually high number of people claiming to hear the voice of God, receiving messages from outer space, or being agents on secret missions phoning the city hall. Warm winter. On 25th October 1972, after the U.S. government officials had warned Americans that they could face fuel shortages if winter were severe, Owens wrote to Sprinkle and others announcing his intention to create unseasonably warm weather in the nation, particularly in Virginia. News reports from the U.S. eastern seaboard did reveal an unusually warm winter, especially in Virginia. Texas weather. After being badgered for a demonstration by radio broadcasters in Dallas, Owens wrote to one of them on 12th of February 1974 that he would cause freakish weather, including heat, storms, lightning attacks, but promised no one would be killed. These things did happen, destroying a good portion of the Texas wheat crop. Some people were killed in car accidents caused by the freezing rain. Chicago chaos. In a letter dated 8th of October 1975, Owens wrote to a radio announcer in Chicago responding to a request for a UFO demonstration. He said he would cause UFO sightings and that these would be accompanied by people doing strange things. There would also be magnetic anomalies, poltergeist phenomena, equipment, and human errors at O'Hare Airport. Finally, he promised to sabotage the Chicago Bears football games for several months without anyone getting hurt. Mishlove notes newspaper clippings reported a mysterious radio signal coming from a bridge in the city, the slaughter of animals by a UFO group in Oregon, unusual traffic jams at O'Hare, unusual weather, and a disastrous season for the Bears, characterized by mishaps and ineptness. Freak storm. On the 1st of June 1977, Owens telephoned Charles Powell, the chief of police for Cape Charles, Virginia, and told him that he would bring a hurricane to the area. On June 6th, an intense storm with high winds and golf ball-sized hailstones struck the coast, causing 5 deaths. Australian Drought and UFOs. An Australian man who identified himself only with the initials BK wrote to Owens on the 9th of April, 1980, requesting that he end a disastrous drought that threatened to turn part of the island into a dust bowl and had already killed thousands of kangaroos. BK asked that Owens start at the northern tablelands and the north coast of New South Wales. Sudden storms brought flooding rains, starting in the area BK had specified. The Sydney Morning Herald declared the drought over on the 30th of May. At the same time, a rash of UFO sightings over Australia was reported by the media. California drought. On the 30th of January 1976, Owens wrote to parapsychologists Hoff and Russell Targ that he would end a drought that was approaching disastrous proportions, with crops and livestock in danger, by using storms, lightning attacks, and high winds and rain until the state was swimming in water. On the 5th of February, as reported in multiple news stories, the first snowstorm to hit San Francisco since 1887 also brought lightning, and was followed by several weeks of snow, lightning, and rain so severe that millions of dollars of damage were caused by the flooding and some lives were lost. Many UFO sightings in the area were reported by the news media. Florida drought and Hurricane David. In early 1979, southern Florida was suffering the worst drought in 40 years. Owens proposed to Grover a year-long demonstration of weather control starting the 1st of March, of which Grover was to write a story for the tabloid paper, the National Enquirer. On the 7th of March, Owens wrote Grover saying he had intended to create electromagnetic oddities, violent freak storms, blackouts, heat waves, hurricanes, and UFO appearances. On the 15th of April, after a request by Grover to end the drought, Owens promised over the phone to send rain in a few weeks. 10 days later, a storm inundated the coast. However, Owens felt that he had been double-crossed by the tabloid after it killed the story due to a failed UFO filming session. Accordingly, he wrote to Grover on the 15th of May that he'd be bringing the drought back to Florida. The summer of 1979 was virtually devoid of precipitation, as reported in the newspaper at the time. Water rationing was imposed in the Florida Keys. On the 22nd of August, Owens phoned Grover saying that a hurricane he had promised in February that would not cause unnecessary deaths was now in the making. The monster storm, Hurricane David, threatened Florida on the 2nd of September. Grover phoned Owens to say thousands of people would be killed if it struck the state directly. Owens wrote back the next day that he'd cooled off the hurricane, and it did indeed weaken unexpectedly before hitting the state. Grover reported that Owens had phoned him to say he'd turned the storm away from where Grover was living, and this happened also. Sports sabotage. Mislove denotes a full chapter to Owens' apparent ability to wreak havoc on team sports competitions, noting that this received more newspaper coverage in the sports sections than his ability to control the weather received on front pages. Owens said he could not help a team he favored, but could hinder one he opposed by causing human error. Sports writers were said to have witnessed him on different occasions effectively sabotaging the Philadelphia Eagles, the Baltimore Colts, the LA Rams, the Baltimore Bullets, the Virginia Squires, and the Dallas Cowboys, and many more teams. Destruction. In June 1972, near Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, Owens demonstrated an ability to make PK energy show up on radar, according to an affidavit by Bill Richards, a friend who had access to the equipment. Owens then predicted that rainstorms and plane crashes as well as other accidents would happen as a result. There were indeed rainstorms and several accidents, including one Navy jet crash. Owens also claimed to have inadvertently caused the crash of the plane and the deaths of more than 100 passengers in New York. He also warned that he would cause severe fire season in California, declaring the state would become hell on earth due to annoyance at the refusal of newspapers to give him credit for ending the drought. As the 1980s progressed, Mishlove reports that Owens became more and more angry that he was not receiving the recognition that he felt he deserved. His communications became more grandiose and threatening. At this time, he was homeless and said that the SIs would launch a war on the U.S. if he was not provided with luxurious lodgings and an enormous salary. This war would only end when a book about him that was being written by Mishlove and paranormal writer D. Scott Rogo was published. His relations with Mishlove soured when Mishlove pointed out that Owens' declarations were increasingly failing to materialize and chastised him for his threats and destructiveness. However, the pair later reconciled. Mishlev notes that Owens took credit for more events than he himself found reasonable, often assuming such large-scale psychokinetic events are possible. He points out the newspapers are full of unusual events. Every day something unusual occurs, and it is usually not the result of psychokinesis. Robert Todd Carroll, in his Skeptic's Dictionary, calls Owen a man many others would call delusional and in need of professional mental health services. So do you think that Owens was just all this was just a coincidence, or do you think he really had some powers and had been contacted by aliens? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to see more of this type of content, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks and have a good day.